Cheers. Okay, so I want to share a few lessons learned from doing exactly this for the last several months. They call it the bleeding edge because it will cut you, and there's a few lessons that we've had to learn the hard way. But first things first, let's ground ourselves in the ancient texts. So MCP was officially released last November, less than a year ago. And I feel it had a little bit of a positioning problem at first, and perhaps still does. It wasn't clear to the community in general what MCP even was, why it was useful, what it would do for them, how to use it, what it's replacing, etc. And we at Tessl, we were not immune from this either. So at Tessl, we build tools to help agents perform better using specs. And our primary interaction modality for a long time was CLI. And I think it took a while for us to understand that actually MCP was going to be huge for us. And it was going to change the way we thought about our product, that actually we don't want humans to be the primary user of Tessl. We want agents to be. Once the penny dropped, we decided we'd build a quick prototype, and it went amazing. No, I'm just kidding. It went really badly. It was really frustrating. We had quite a few issues, mainly around like tools actually being called at all. And then when they were called, are they called correctly? Are they called in the right context with the right arguments, etc.? It went so badly, in fact, that we kind of explored abandoning it altogether and making our own agent TUI experience so that we could fully control the context behind all of the tool calls. We even tried to cope by saying, well, maybe if you have to like steer the agent super, strongly, maybe that's actually okay. But really, I thought, surely this is not the way, and kind of went back to first principles. I went back to the MCP Quick Start, the official MCP Quick Start. How many of you guys have done this? Yeah. So the official MCP Quick Start is a weather MCP server, and it exposes a couple of tools. Among them is Get Weather. The nice thing about weather is that everyone knows what it is. It's very clear what weather is. If LLMs know what it is, right? If we're having a conversation about weather, a tool like Get Weather makes perfect sense to you, obvious. And in fact, even if the LLM didn't have this tool at all, you can imagine that its answer, if I ask what's the weather, might be like, here's how you get the weather. So it's really intuitively named, and that kind of made me go back and look at the names of the tools we'd exposed initially. We had a one-to-one relationship from the CLI tools to the MCP tools. Anyone notice anything about these tool names? Yeah, right, exactly. They're ambiguous, right? Someone said GitHub. They're not GitHub tools, but they might as well be. We have no idea what a workflow is or what a step is. They're super generic. The outcome is unclear. I think that's important. If I run a tool called Workflow Create, I have no idea, or Workflow Run, what's gonna happen next? I don't know, it's a mystery. And on top of that, this is what tools look like to the agent, because our MCP server is called Tessl. This is not helping anybody. Like, this is not augmenting the context. LLM doesn't know what Tessl is. Certainly doesn't know what a Tessl workflow is. So we did a lot of iteration on the names of our tools, which is kind of my first tip for you tonight, really. We ended up with something that looks more like this. These are much nicer. They gave us a lot more success in terms of tools actually being called correctly. These are very semantically clear. They're contextual, as with the weather example, right? If I'm talking about making a spec or changing a spec, create an editor right there. They're intuitive to pick. That wasn't the only problem behind our initial MCP prototype. Oh, sorry, I went ahead of myself there. There's another way to do this, by the way, which is context management. I feel like this is the blunt object in our arsenal when it comes to adherence and tool calling, and probably a lot of you are already doing this. You can give an agent instructions about how to use an MCP server well, or how to achieve like a task well, just by providing it context in things like agents.md, unless you're using Claude Code because they're clinging to Claude.md, bless them. Claude also has subagents, which I think are a really nice way to organize context. You can have a subagent that is an expert in your MCP server or in your task. So you can give it bounded access to specific tools, and give it all of the instructions that it needs. And then all you need to do in agents.md is prompt the main agent about like when to call on the subagent. And the subagent can be the expert. I think there's a really, really nice context management pattern. Back to what I was just saying, this is not the only issue that we had. Behind the scenes, our MCP server was actually crashing all the time for a really boring reason that I'm not going to share with you. But the point is, this is actually really difficult to diagnose, because when the MCP server broke, it just looked like non-adherence. It just looked like, okay, the tools aren't being called. Why is that? And hot tip, if you ask an LLM why it is or isn't doing something, it's not going to tell you the truth because it doesn't know. It has no idea. So why didn't you call this tool? Don't know. So it took us a while to kind of see that actually the source of the problem is underneath. But eventually we got to an MCP server design that we were really happy with. Tools are being called as we expected, and they're being called well and in the right situations. What about optimizing? So for us, we had a couple of long-running tools. Long-running tools and agents are really frustrating to use. You don't want to just like hang for 1 or 2 minutes, kind of a black box, annoying. Luckily, the MCP spec supports progress tracking, progress reporting. This is a really cool feature that came out in June. We thought, amazing, this addresses our concerns. We're going to spike it out and see what happens. I did that spike. I was unsuccessful. And I thought, if I am not successful, maybe it's impossible. But I found other people are having this issue as well. This is an issue in the Claude Code repo, and I kind of just said, yeah, like, look, nothing in the Claude Code docs says that progress reporting is supported, so I'm just going to assume it's not supported. But luckily, someone came to our rescue, gave us some information about things we could try, why the solutions that we'd tried so far weren't quite right, and kind of best practices in general. Really, really helpful. So we spent a couple days trying to get this right, and we still failed at that. And maybe we're terrible engineers. That's absolutely possible. But we kind of went back to this thread, which had some more activity on it. And we looked at this person's responses a little bit more. Does anyone notice anything about this response? This is an LLM. This is LLM generated text. It also happens to be a complete hallucination. None of these things are true. This is an active thread, by the way, in Claude Code's issues right now. So you can view the drama for yourself, because people got very, very upset, including us. This person is famous in our Slack. They've got their own Slack emoji. If I react with this, it means that you've wasted 1 to 2 business days of my time. Sad. But I think the takeaway is, just because something is in the official MCP spec or the MCP framework that you're using, it doesn't mean the clients are going to support it. And that's really, really important to keep in mind. I think a good heuristic for this is absence of evidence in this case is actually evidence of absence. If it's not clearly supported, just assume that it's unsupported, or else you'll fall into the same trap that we did. There's a few tools that you can use to track this kind of thing, by the way. I have a page, my last slide is like a list of resources, so I'll make sure that you guys have that at the end, so don't worry too much about it. But one that I want to call out is something that a colleague of mine just made called agentcompat.com. James made this, he's in the back, so please bug him about it because it's very cool. But you can see this list, it's much, much, much longer than the screenshot, but lists of features in the official MCP spec and whether they're supported by various clients. Really useful if you're actively developing MCP servers to keep in mind. Also, don't ask the agent whether they support things because they don't. They don't know. We got around this in the end, by the way, by building our own kind of sidecar tool called Tessl Observe. This is like a little hack, which, you know, it does feel hacky. Basically, it listens for MCP tool calls and kind of gives you a play-by-play of what's happening behind the scenes. It does feel like a hack. We would have liked to have that progress reporting actually in the agent interface itself. But in the absence of that, I think hacking is okay. Like, this software is nascent and these things are appreciated. So what next? So now that we have an MCP server that we're happy with, that we've kind of worked around optimizing a little bit, what next? How do we find more opportunities for optimization, et cetera? I think there's tons of ways. One way that I found really fun is something that I called bot fooding. I'm kicking myself now because Claude fooding was right there, but I missed it. This is a play on dog fooding, where, of course, engineers use their own software to kind of help build up empathy with users. Your user, if you are developing MCP servers, is an agent. It's a robot. So you need to build up empathy with them as well. But essentially what I've done here is given the agent a series of tasks to complete, and then just kind of given it bounded access to a handful of tools. In this case, like use only Tessl tools to complete these tasks, right? And just let it loose and see how well it did. And importantly, asked it for continuous feedback and reflection. And honestly, I was really surprised at the quality of the insights I got. Obviously, you need to use a little discretion here, like 1 or 2 pinches of salt. But I think you would be really surprised if you asked the agent things like, where did you get stuck? Where would you have done something differently? Where did you make a decision and then have to double back on it? You might find that your MCP design really, really benefits from insights like that. On that same note, there's something that came out relatively recently called MCP Mark. This is a benchmarking kind of collection for MCP tools. It's only a small portion of MCP tools right now, but it's organized by tasks. This is also in my resources page, by the way. You can submit tasks to it and stuff, but you'll basically say, have the model complete this task and give an output that looks something like this, and then benchmark the output. This, of course, being a list of kind of the tool calls and the results of that exploration. Really interesting. MCP Mark organizes results by model, which is kind of interesting, but I think you can infer quite a lot about how various models react to different MCP designs, record stuff like time, input tokens, output tokens, et cetera. So you can kind of infer some efficiency metrics from there. So final takeaways. Agents are users too. You have to design with empathy for them if you're designing MCP servers, and you should collect feedback from them also. Keep MCP spec and client support disparities in mind. Super important. Obviously, your end users don't care what cool MCP stuff you've implemented if they can't see it. And hack around those disparities when you find them. I think that's absolutely okay. And of course, like, this is a select group. I imagine all of us are, well, I hope you're interested in AI stuff if you're here. But like, you're kind of at the cutting edge of these things, and your users and your end users are too, probably, and they'll appreciate little hacks. And lastly, don't ask an agent to debug itself as a reminder. That's all I have for you. I will make sure that this is sent out to all of you. Thank you very much.